Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tim Blotz, coming to you from the Fox 9 newsroom in Minneapolis. Welcome to our streaming coverage of Day 6 of the federal civil rights trial for the three former Minneapolis police officers who assisted in the arrest of George Floyd. Now, these three officers are J. Alexander King, Thomas Lane, and Tu Tao. And all three are accused of depriving George Floyd of his civil rights on May 25th of 2020, when he was placed under arrest after trying to pass a counterfeit $20 bill at the Cup Foods there on 38th in Chicago in Minneapolis. Now, Derek Chauvin, of course, was the fourth police officer on the scene that day. He has already pleaded guilty in this particular civil rights case. He is also in prison for the death of George Floyd. Now, Rob Olson has been in the federal court since the beginning of this trial in St. Paul. He joins us now. And Rob, on the stand today, we're hearing more from Minneapolis Police Inspector Katie Blackwell. She was in charge of the training procedures for the Minneapolis Police Department. Tu Tao's attorney, Robert Pauley, today questioning her. And a lot of discussion today about this concept called excited delirium. And I think we should start there and talk about what that is, explain it to our viewers, and why that keeps getting brought up in this trial.
Well, excited delirium is a controversial term, Tim. It is not recognized by the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, or the World Health Organization. It has been criticized as being sort of a catch-all scapegoat term that police use when people die in custody, especially after tasing or any kind of restraint has been used on them, any kind of asphyxiation type restraint has been used on them, it's often excited delirium. Now, it's defined by police departments as an agitated state. And when the emergency room doctor who was on the stand last week from HCMC, he talked about excited delirium, and he noted that it's controversial. But had also said in his definition it's more of an agitated state that people get into after drug use, in which they can become sort of incoherent and delirious, and can get to a point where they can then maybe cause their own cardiac arrest. So that's sort of what excited delirium is. Again, though, a lot of criticisms that it's used as a scapegoat, that in custody deaths are caused by the positional asphyxiation from the holds or from tasing. But again, but police are trained on this. And so Robert Pauley on the stand with Inspector Blackwell on the stand, Robert Pauley on cross-examination of her for several hours today, going over very methodically many of the training videos that were in the in-service training for Minneapolis police, going over excited delirium, the different things, the different elements of it. And they used an acronym called Not a Crime. And each letter stood for one other element of this excited delirium and what you should do to respond to it. And again, showing videos of people holding these suspects down, often with knee holds or body holds or prone positions, to get them calmed down and to get them handcuffed and into custody. And it also went into the use then of ketamine. A number of questions about the use of ketamine, the department's policy on that, HCMC's use of ketamine with their paramedics, and that the police department position was using ketamine as a sedative when you suspect excited delirium is a way that they believed could save lives, that it would sedate them rather than let them continue to be agitated to the point of triggering their own cardiac arrest. So that was very, very much a part of the cross-examination today. And again, Inspector Blackwell confirming these are part of their training. You don't reach any kind of overall conclusionary argument from the defense when they're doing this. They save that for closing arguments. But going through and getting Inspector Blackwell to confirm that all this is part of training, This is what the officers learned in service, that excited delirium was very much on their mind in certain situations, and their responses to it was very much part of the training as well.
So I think, can we infer from that that part of the defense here, especially from Robert Pauley, he's trying to build his case that at least his client, Tu Tao's actions were justified then based upon some of the training that they had had there at MPD?
Yeah, and defense attorneys in the opening statements last week were very pointed to say that they were going to blame the training of the Minneapolis Police Department, that their officers here, their defendants, their former officers that they are representing, were responding to this situation with George Floyd by the way that they were trained. And so, yeah, very, very much so on that excited delirium response. And, you know, making note, too, that one of them, Thomas Lane, even mentions, and you can hear it in his body-worn camera video, that I'm concerned about excited delirium. So this was very much on their mind. Is the training such that it was to blame here for how these officers responded to the scene, therefore basically absolving them of any responsibility because they were doing what they were trained to do?
All right, you mentioned Thomas Lane there. His attorney, Earl Grain, also had a chance to question Inspector Blackwell today. And it sounded like from his questioning there, Rob, he's trying to plant the seed in the mind of the jurors that Thomas Lane was trying to de-escalate the situation, particularly with George Floyd as he was trying to place him under arrest.
Yeah, Earl Gray's cross-exam, which was fairly brief, you know, maybe 15 minutes or so, compared to the other defense attorneys. His was by far the shortest cross-exam. But his questions were specifically about his client, Thomas Lane. And, you know, while the other defense attorneys really went after the training and the procedures and the manual, he asked specifically about Lane's actions as seen on video, responding to that situation at 38th and Chicago, asking Inspector Blackwell, did you see Thomas Lane, you know, after he drew his weapon, immediately put it away? Is that de-escalation? Yes. Did you see Thomas Lane as he's trying to get George Floyd into the squad car? That's also a de-escalation to try to create a barrier? Yes. Did you see when he asked if he should stay in the squad with George Floyd? He asked George Floyd, would it help if I stayed in here with you? Is that part of de-escalation to calm him down? Yes. So he's really building on those things to try to make that case that his client, Thomas Lane, did things by the book and continues to be what is their training procedure here for de-escalation. That he twice asked if they should roll George Floyd onto his side in the side recovery position, that he checked for a pulse at one point, and then moments after that, after he checked for a pulse and couldn't find it, that the ambulance arrived. The paramedic came in. Immediately then, the paramedic is in charge of the scene. George Floyd is no longer in the custody and care of the officers, but that Lane continued to go and helped try to revive George Floyd in the ambulance, assisted the paramedics loading him, started chest compressions, etc., really building that case that he did make efforts. So you'll recall here, Thomas Lane is not charged with failing to intervene. The other two officers are charged with failing to intervene in what Derek Chauvin was doing. Lane is not. He's charged with failing to provide medical care. So that's why Earl Gray is specifically showing that he operated by the book and did what he could to provide medical care.
Rob, we're in the middle of the lunch break right now, or just the start of it. I'm assuming they're probably going to come back at about 2 o'clock this afternoon. Do we know if Inspector Blackwell is still going to be on the stand? I have to believe that the federal government is going to want to come back and cross-examine her one more time during their rebuttal questioning.
Yeah, reconvening at 2 o'clock. We don't know. The judge did not indicate that she would be there, but I can't imagine that she would not still be on the stand. Now, all three defense attorneys have concluded their cross-examination, but she's been on the stand since Thursday morning with a break for the emergency room physician Thursday afternoon. Then she came back, was there all day Friday, has been on there all morning today. I would be very surprised if the prosecution did not have a significant amount of redirect examination. And what that is after listening to all the cross-examination by the defense attorneys, the prosecution gets up and says, trying to clarify some of the things that the defense attorneys asked her about, to clarify it, to then fit into what they're trying to prove. And then the defense attorneys get to re-cross-examine to basically be a rebuttal to the questions they were asking. So I would be surprised if she's done quite yet. It'd be very rare to not have a redirect and maybe some recross questions here for a half hour or so.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Do we have any kind of indication of who might be the next witness on the stand, Rob, after Inspector Blackwell?
We don't at this point. Certainly there are a number of witnesses that, that were part of Derek Chauvin's murder trial that you could imagine would be called for this trial again as well, whether it's some of the other witnesses on the scene or other people from the police department regarding training if they wanted to continue down that road. Certainly, another thing that was part of the cross-examination today that they got into, that the defense attorneys got into, was the field training officers. Derek Chauvin was the field training officer, and about sort of the idea, the structure in the Minneapolis Police Department about the role and the authority that those field training officers had for the new recruits. And so that even though Thomas Lane was technically in charge of the scene, being the senior officer of the first squad to get there, they very much deferred to Derek Chauvin because that was sort of the mentality instilled during the training. So could we be going down the line of additional witnesses about the training and about that? The prosecution's case is, still has the case, so they would be calling their witnesses, but would it be somebody else to talk about training or manuals, or is it somebody else to describe the scene? We'll see.
And keep in mind, I want our audience to keep in mind here that this is just day 6, and I underscore just day 6 of this trial because we're expecting this to perhaps go upwards of 3 weeks, correct, Rob?
Yeah, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, really. I mean, the judge had said 4, but he had indicated a hopefulness for 2. But again, we are now day 6 of actual trial, not counting the jury selection, and the prosecution has probably got a number of witnesses still left to call. So I would imagine, we'll be going into next week for sure.
All right, Rob Olson coming to us from the federal courthouse in St. Paul on day 6 of this trial. We're going to have a complete wrap-up tonight on Fox 9 News at 5 o'clock, and we'll be back here again on the stream here on fox9.com/live. and on our YouTube channel at approximately this same time tomorrow. We'll have a complete wrap-up for you tonight at 5 o'clock. In the meantime, I'm Tim Blotz at Fox 9. Have a great afternoon.